You are now tuned in to the Project 365 experience.
Welcome back, guys, to the Project 365 podcast. I am your host, Coach O, and today I'm joined again by my good friend Josué Sédrjo, and we're going to talk NBA Draft Lottery. So much to digest. First of all, Josué, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Excited to watch all these prospects now playing summer league as we are getting ready to embrace, let's call it entertaining and what's the best word I can look for? Entertaining and unlikely basketball, unlikely combination basketball, unlikely events and moments basketball. Summer league is its own universe.
Absolutely. When we were talking about just this draft in general, I want to kind of give you the platform just to talk about it because um, a lot of people were using the word weak, and you didn't like that term. You said it was more of a draft where we develop players and where your player development has to do such a big role into this. So what did you mean by that?
I think it's fair to say that there's a general expectation for every draft class to yield between 1 to 4 franchise players every time out, right? And for the most part, a lot of those franchise players, they have those traits or the moment or a clear skill that you can see in their profile coming out in their draft year. It's evident, whether it's the length, the shooting ability, the shot creation ability, the athleticism. Like, there is one obvious skill that makes you think, oh man, this guy can be a franchise player for us if everything goes right. And in this draft class, it was not the case. There wasn't a singular player that had, multiple skills or one singular at an all-time level that led you to believe to that. Certainly not at face value. And even if you kept on digging a little bit more, whether it's underlying numbers or, dig into the personality of every player, nobody would jump at you in an obvious way. If you look overall through the history of the draft, every draft class, whether coming into it is looked at strong or looked at weak, yields about 1 to 5 franchise players, but like 5 to 7 all-stars, regardless whether it's coded as weak or strong. In this draft class, I looked at this as a developmental draft. So it was a draft where there were multiple players who had interesting profiles. Not clean, not complete, not perfect, but interesting. And interesting enough that with the right situation, in terms of being surrounded by good complementary players, veterans and young players, with a good fit with the coaching staff, style, and personality, and with the right mental makeup, not just working hard, but a certain level of, let's call it, mental toughness and adaptability, that some of those players would have a chance to succeed. Now, not all of those guys were drafted in the lottery, and that's why it's going to be super interesting to keep following all these prospects over time, is that the answer to who's going to be a franchise player or a multiple time all-star is not clear and evident, and it could come up from many different places. This draft's been compared historically to the 2013 one. That's the one where Giannis Antetokounmpo goes, was it 15th? I think he goes 15th overall, becomes the player he is today after, again, development. And Rudy Gobert goes 27th and becomes the player he is today because development. This draft class is very, very similar to that one in terms of the list of profile of players coming into it. And the number one key and the number one factor into determining the outcome for all those players is going to be the development, the place, the opportunity, and the mental makeup of the player.
And as if we didn't need more complication to this, the Atlanta Hawks, who had a 3% chance of winning the draft lottery, they ended up winning that. So Atlanta could have gone so many different directions with this, but with the number one overall pick, they chose Zachary Risacher, which I found was a very interesting pick. But what did you see coming from that?
Well, I mean, I think with the Boston Celtics winning the NBA championship, it just reinforced the notion. It didn't teach it. It reinforced the notion that wings galore is the way to go if you're going to win at the highest level. If you can have the most highest quality and quantity of two-way wings that are both effective offensive players and versatile, effective defenders, that's the best foundation for a championship team. When you looked at the profile of all, let's say, lottery guys, because that's who we're going to be focusing on today, Zachary Risashi clearly had a profile of potentially becoming a two-way wing. Now, to which extent he can become that, at what level, that's where player development is going to come into play, because he's not a finished product. However, he's a piece that, independently of what the Atlanta Hawks do with Trae Young, he can fit into a good team. His archetype, in terms of being potentially a two-way wing, is the most valuable in terms of team building, but he's also valuable in terms of trade talks. I'm not saying that the Atlanta Hawks are going to trade Zachary Risashi. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, when there comes trade conversation, the piece that is looked upon as the most valuable in any kind of trade discussion is that archetype. And that's why the Atlanta Hawks surely went with that decision.
So what's interesting with this, we're just going to be focusing on the lottery, as you said, for today. What is very interesting with players that are picked that high is that a lot of times there's a clear vision with what they want to do with players that they select this high in the draft. So it's either we're actually drafting this player for a need that we have and we're trying to cover, or for a lot of different situations, maybe that player can be used as like a bargaining chip for them to be able to do certain trades and all that kind of stuff. So when you're looking at, I'm going to reinforce a little bit what you said. When you're looking at the fit with Trae Young, just having like that ability to, because what's super important with the player development piece is that is the reps, right? The Hawks were not going to get somebody that couldn't fit with their superstar, is what they want, especially having won the lottery like this. You get the chance at the number one overall pick. You are going to choose somebody that in the long run, you can see potentially, does that pairing have something that they're able to work together and move forward with? I like that pick. And I also like, kind of like a couple of trends that we're going to see here, because right away after the number one, the number two pick went to Washington, and Washington selected Alex Sarr. So there's a big emphasis being put also on maybe these international players are coming in with something that allows them maybe to be more, I'm going to say, ready than a lot of different like college players, you know? I think it all depends on what way certain organizations want to go. But we were just talking about Alex Sarr at the second pick. A lot of opportunity for Alex Sarr to be able to do some things in Washington, especially with Washington being in full rebuild.
Yeah, it goes without question. I don't know that every international player automatically is ready to contribute. I think if you compare the draft profile of Alex Sarr and Victor Wembanyama, I think you would find some striking differences between the two of them. Not every draft prospect is born equal, whether they're European or not. However, what Alex Sarr is going to have that Victor also had is the runway to explore his game, the runway to be able to develop, at least explore the development of a multitude of skill, whether it's his shot creation, his defending on multiple position, not just in drop coverage, but in switches, the ability for him to blitz. I mean, I'm looking at him defensively, and I see a lot of what Chris Bosh could do with the Miami Heat back in when it was, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh together, from a defensive standpoint, where you can blitz pick roll all the way to half court, and he's going to disrupt the ball handler so much that he's going to have time to go back to his man after the blitz or the hard hedge or whatever it is. From a defensive standpoint. Now, offensively, this is why player development matters so much in this case, is we're not really sure how he's going to contribute. What's his best position? Is he best as a 4? Okay, for that, he needs to shoot. How's his shot right now? It's interesting. It's not a complete non-zero, but there's a lot of work to be done. Or is he going to be a 5? Well, if he's going to be a 5, he needs to bulk up. He certainly would need to finish at a really, really high clip, which with his body type right now, against some guys, he certainly can, because he could beat him via speed. But then other guys, go finishing around Joel Embiid, like, what's your solution to that test? And again, going to Washington, he's going to have a lot of runway, because now that we're past free agency, we know they've signed Jonas Valanciunas. The heavy duty of post-up defending is not going to be on him to start. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be allowed to rove and work in as a help defender but he's also so young and run his development. He's going to have to learn the concepts of help defense. And again, with a long runway, there's an opportunity for him to come in and have an impact. Certainly not in year one, but at least have moments of impact in year one.
Absolutely. Gonna go right away to the third overall pick. The Houston Rockets. They selected Reed Sheppard from Kentucky. Reed, I found, was very interesting. Because you're looking at arguably probably one of the better shooters that we have in this draft. At Kentucky, he shot 52% from three, and he was also taking like a pretty good amount of threes for a college player, right? So like he was taking 5 a game. Houston hoping that the shooting is a good pairing in their backcourt. So what do we have about their backcourt, Jose?
I mean, let's think about it. This is all coming off the bench, right? So there's a production profile here that's mightily interesting if you're the Houston Rockets. In a way, is he not Fred VanVleet on drugs, a little younger, but in the same archetype, but the same, what meets the eye isn't necessarily what the production is, because at first you'd look at the body type, you'd be like, there's no way these are his numbers, but in fact, these are absolutely his numbers because the competitiveness and the makeup of the player makes up for those quote unquote lack of at first glance physical attribute. And then you found out his vertical inch is 40-something inch and you're like, there's no problems here. What's going to be interesting is that Houston has a lot of shot creators already, right? Whether it's Alperen Sengun, right, which I think you can make a case is their best player. Jalen Green, in his nature, shot taker. Fred VanVleet, like I mentioned, veteran, been there, done that. Obviously more comfortable on and off the ball, but has a role as the lead point guard. So how does Sheppard find his spot? There's going to be an opportunity for him to have an impact, certainly most likely coming off the bench to start. But how much of an impact in year one? What does the roster look like as they move forward? It's a good bet to have a surefire role player, rotation player, somewhere. He's going to fit in the rotation on a good team, no question. But at what level, where, with who, on the Rockets, somewhere else, still answers to be found there.
Yeah, I like what you said about Fred VanVleet. I think that's definitely something to look out for.
I mean, to be fair, his vertical is significantly higher than Fred's. I do need to point that out.
Absolutely. But what's interesting about the Houston Rockets makeup of just their roster, a lot of people are kind of questioning the height, if the height is going to be like an issue. But I think they have a lot of defensive versatility to cover certain things up, And I think something that he's done really well at the college level is like he's a really good we call that second line defender, right? He's really good on those. So like there's a lot of freedom for him. I want to see if he's maybe someone that can add more value to the Houston Rockets. Maybe getting steals, maybe getting into some passing lanes and all that kind of stuff, So it'll be an interesting one to see. We'll go to the fourth pick. San Antonio Spurs select Stephon Castle from the University of Connecticut. Has a 1 at the college level. It's coming into the Spurs organization. What is it that we're expecting from Stephon Castle?
We talk about somebody that won the lottery twice in 3 months. I go to UConn. I know I got a good NIL deal. I won the championship, and then I'm not only a lottery pick, I'm a high lottery pick. So rookie scale, good amount of chunk change. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna play with Victor Wembanyama for the foreseeable future. I mean, life can't really get any better the last 3 months if you're Mr. Castle, without question. For me, he's the guy I'm the most excited to watch at Summer League. Not so much because, I don't know that there will be a consensus that he was the best prospect in this draft. He was my favorite from a two-way and fitability. I don't know if that's a word. Fit standpoint on a winning team. And I just want to see how much of point guard equity he has. I think it was clear from his camp, like that's how he wanted to brand himself. That's the type of situation he was looking for. Whether he is or not, that's what player development is for. He's clearly going to a good place in San Antonio where they have a long history of success across multiple positions. But even if he's not a point guard, if he can just be a good second side guy from catching on the move and then executing a good decision, whether it's with a ball screen or without a ball screen, or whether it's a quick swing or whether it's a touch pass, just being a connector plus, or let's say like point guard minus. Like if he just gets to that with his defense, I mean, we have a winning piece on a championship team. So I'm excited to see what he looks like in summer league, and gets his feet wet starting tonight against the Charlotte Hornets.
And exactly, like going back to what you said, you're coming in and you know who the main piece is, right? So
That's right.
In a weird way, like your role is kind of like, I guess, a bit simplified from day one. I think that has a lot of value for these guys, especially coming into this. And again, we talked about how good of a passer Vic is already, right? Wembanyama is already as good of a passer. There's going to be some opportunity for him to find some seams into the defense where he could cut, backdoor, and that kind of stuff. Because, again, for me, my biggest concern, I was looking at the championship run in college. It was definitely the shooting. It was definitely
That's right.
shooting. And I
That's right.
think, there's opportunity for him to maybe see if we could do some things as a primary ball handler. But, it's like you said, it's pretty good to be able to go into a situation knowing that you're playing with Vic, because again, there's so many different opportunities that kind of opens up. We're going to go to the 5th pick, Detroit Pistons, who were kind of hoping that they would have gotten the one. My heart goes for the people of Detroit. They were kind of hoping to get the 1st pick. But they got Ron Holland at the 5th pick. Ron Holland, who played G League Ignite. What are we seeing from this one? This one I found pretty interesting. Going into the future, Cade right now is the person that's in the backcourt. So I'm intrigued about the fit, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, Cade signing his rookie max extension earlier this summer. Obviously, I think the core piece on that team is clearly established, and I think the front office reinforced that. I don't think a coach has ever won the MVP trophy, like regular season MVP. But I think Fred Vinson, the assistant coach and shooting coach for the Pistons, has a chance if all these guys shoot, whether it's Cade improving his jump shot off the dribble, Ron Holland, Jaden Ivey, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, if any, or if all these guys or most of these guys are able to shoot, withdrawing like space, creating some spacing because they're a threat, Fred Vinson is the 2024-25 NBA MVP. I'm not even making any jokes. I'm actually dead serious. And some will like to believe that Ron Holland's mechanics aren't broken. Some will say they're not broken, but they are a work in progress. Some would say they're not there. I'm like somewhere in and across all that entire spectrum. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not necessarily optimistic, but I also have seen worse. So it comes down to the makeup. It comes down to the situation. It comes down to the surrounding pieces. Okay, so we know they signed Tobias Harris in free agency. They trade for Tim Hardaway Jr. Can they create lineups where the young guys have space to do what they do from a driving standpoint, putting pressure on the defense while they are training their shooting ability? If that can take place, eventually we might have a very interesting player, because physically he's really stout. Defensively, he cares. He's not perfect. I don't know that he's an ace, but he cares. So then do we have a good rotation player? He's another one that somebody is going to be interesting, because we know he's going to put up the attempts, but the question is going to be about everything else. Can you have flashes of playmaking? Can you have flashes of, I don't know, multiple jump shots in a row where the mechanics already looked improved from the time that he's spent in the organization since the draft? So it was a surprise in some sense, in that not many projected that, but it's a bet from an archetype standpoint. You understand, if you believe Fred Vinson is that guy. I'm one of the people who does believe he's that guy. So let's see.
Rounding up the trio of France picks in the lottery, we have Tidjane Salon, who from Cholet Basket. The Charlotte Hornets decided to pick him. Listen, we're talking about a young team that already has 2 guys that we're going to put the ball in their hands. I think the fit can be very interesting in this one, because you talk about somebody who has a really good motor. He moves well off the ball. He's going to be required to do a little bit more of that. But for me, a couple of concerns that I had was just the finishing, right? Like, it's a different kind of athleticism, different kind of, bodies and physicality. So, what do you think of the 6th overall pick?
I think it makes sense in the context like LaMelo Ball's on your team. I think LaMelo's going to make his life a lot easier on the offensive end. Like you said, I think, expecting him to create a ton of shots right off the bat efficiently is just not realistic. I think he can do a lot of things that LaMelo can't do. Energy, the rebounding, vertical running, right? Rim to rim stuff. It's interesting because between Risache, him, and Sar, there was a lot of discussion about which one is the best French prospect. If you're going to make the case that he is, you would bet on the motor, the tools, believe the jump shot isn't broken, and say he might not have the speed, but just the length. Like that's the Giannis type of school of thought. He's not Giannis. I'm saying the school of thought of how long strides creates rim pressure, even though if he's not the most athletic, but with the length, if he improves the core strength, maybe you have a devastating rim attacker, like absolutely devastating. But again, player development, we are talking about Charlotte, young coach, Coach Charles Lee that was just hired. It makes sense for him to grow with that team. Let's see what it looks like.
Donovan Clingan was picked at number 7 by the Portland Trail Blazers. Another player from that Connecticut championship team. This one was interesting because, some people said that potentially he might have moved up to number 1, that maybe he's able to go to 3rd. He was ranged anywhere from that. Like, this was someone that I was just trying to keep up. And like so many different teams were saying so many different like good things about him. So there's definitely a lot of potential in this one. What I find very interesting is it's kind of like the prototypical big that an NBA franchise would like to draft, just somebody that is able to pass, somebody's able to maybe set screens, roll, really good IQ, that kind of stuff. You want to see the pairing with the guards that the Portland Trailblazers have in the future. But Donovan Clingan, what do we got about him?
The hub, being a hub where the offense flows through, it adds another dimension to the Portland Trailblazers offense that's heavily guard centered, whether that's Scoot, Henderson, or Anthony Simons, or Sheen and Sharp that they obviously believe in. So having him as an outlet, as a release valve for all three of them is certainly something that Portland is interesting. And as Coach Chauncey Billups detailed in his press conference, they were not very good on defense, and he's a very good defender, so he's going to help without question, helping cleaning up the mess. The fit with DeAndre Ayton is going to be interesting because we're talking about a player that has gone through an interesting journey, let's say, in the last 3 seasons, from the last season in Phoenix to his start in Portland. So how does he fit with him? He's having an interesting, at least, FIBA qualifiers with Team Bahamas. So mindset coming in, fit coming in, how he views his role, how they view the partnership. Let's see what it looks like, because from a potential of a defensive front court, there's something really interesting. He's another one that in Summer League, I would expect some very good defensive moments from a mind and from a events standpoint. So events, I'm talking about, block, steals, deflections. And then mine is, oh, wow, look at that help defense that he did preventing a shot attempt. So it's not necessarily a stat of like shot attempt prevented. I mean, I guess you could chart it, but it's not something that's going to jump at you in the box score. But if you watch the film, I would expect him to have a couple moments like that leads you to believe, oh, he can have some kind of defensive impact right away. Now, whether that translates to team success, that's a whole other question, but he's interesting nonetheless.
He's one of those players that I could already see us having discussions about this. Oh, how does he move in ball screen coverages? Is he altering certain shots at the rim? Right. I agree. A lot of versatility that he could bring that. The 8th pick, the San Antonio Spurs, the San Antonio Spurs took us for a little bit of a ride. They picked Rob Dillingham. So automatically, as soon as they pick Rob Dillingham, I'm starting to think about, okay, how does the fit look like with Stephon Castle, with Wemby and whatnot? But there was a bit of work that was going on in the background, and that pick ended up being traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So now we're looking at the best one-on-one, I would say, scorer in the draft going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. What do we think about that?
I mean, it was their number one need going to the offseason for the Wolves, right? I mean, coming off the playoffs and the playoff run they had, falling short against the Dallas Mavericks in 5, it was, well, okay, well, if Anthony Edwards doesn't have it going, who do we turn to that can seriously put pressure on the rim. Mike Conley, great player. He's much closer to the end than the beginning. Otherwise, you look around the roster, nobody can actually put pressure on the rim and or create a quality, some kind of quality look for themselves. The Wolves were limited by their flexibility because of the high salaries they have, and they were limited in draft picks because of the Rudy Gobert trade. So their best shot was to trade a long-term future lottery pick to get back in this draft to get, like you said, the best shot creator. And in Rob Dillingham, he's going to have the opportunity to put them Jacks up right off the bounce, right off the bat. There's going to be a clear role and a clear opportunity for him. How he competes defensively, not being the, let's say, Waldo every single play down the stretch for a team that is in their mind is expecting to go far in the playoffs. Like, he's going to be on the scouting report. So he's going to have to, at the very least, compete. And then offensively, how efficient can he actually be as a rookie? I mean, it's asking a rookie to be, let's say, your third best scorer or your third best creator in a second round of a playoff series when you're on the scouting report for everybody. It's a high bar to clear. So let alone how he looks in summer league, over the next 12 months, like that's what they're hoping to get out of him. It's a high bar. Let's see how the young man does. It's been done before in a rotation role, but it's very, very rare.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, for the Memphis situation, you're looking at, Mike Conley's turning 38 in October, right? So, again, piggybacking on what you said, you're looking for that long-term prospect to be able to kind of have a good fit.
Yeah, that's the other part too, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Ninth pick. Memphis had a ninth pick, and they decided to draft for a need that they had. They went and picked two-time player of the year, Zach Edey from Purdue. And we knew how important Steven Adams was to what they were building in. And you can kind of like see that they're kind of, in a way, trying to tend to that void that was left when he left the team. So what do we think about Zach Edey?
Oh, Canada. That's it. I'm not singing. I'm not singing. I'm not singing further. I'm not singing any further. We gotta be proud. We gotta be proud. Strong and free. All right, I'm done. So now when it comes to Zach Edey, I mean, you mapped it out. His role is going to be replicate what Steven Adams was giving us and was able to give us until his injury. As soon as they traded him away at the deadline, I thought myself immediately, okay, replacement most likely going to come through the draft. Let's see who they pick. There was talk they were interested in Dominic Klingon. Whether they were or not, that's a different story. In the end, they picked a guy that they've had their eye on for a long, long time. That I know for a fact. And they're going to be very comfortable in terms of giving him a template and be like, hey, man, offensive rebounding, screen and roll, and clean up all the messes defensively. If you're defending on the ball in terms of post-up situations, no, Jaren's got your back. Jaren Jackson's going to have your back. And in vice versa, maybe you can't roam, but just by being loud, tall, and big and present, you're going to deter a lot of attempts at the rim. Now, how many minutes can he earn? And let's say be plus, for the team to be plus in those minutes right off the bat. For a team that fancies themselves a contender in the Western Conference, again, high bar to clear archetype, good support. Let's see how the player develops.
As you're saying this, like, I'm just kind of going back through my mind, and it's like Zach Edey was somebody that kept on surprising me as the college season was happening. Like, you knew going into this year of college that he was going to be the focal point of the Purdue offense. My mind automatically went like, he's going to be at the top of that scouting report. They had a great year last year. Let's see how he does. And the number one thing would say when guys are that big, you're like, okay, can they keep up? Can they keep possession? It just felt like Zach Edey had his imprint on every single possession of the Purdue offense. When he needed to post up and get touches, they were able to give him touches. When he just had to be just a presence at the ball screen level, he was moving. So there's definitely a lot of potential. But again, we started this conversation with, player development is going to be a big thing, right? So obviously the spacing and the court, the athletes are different in the NBA. So something to look forward to. So with the 10th pick, Utah Jazz, Cody Williams from the University of Colorado. Intriguing pick. Utah going into their full rebuild. Probably drafting him for potential, eh? Josué.
Yeah, it goes without saying. I think they went with the best player available per their board. It's a roster in flux. There's the Larry Marketing situation. Let's see whether he gets traded or not. They're certainly hoping he's as good as his brother, Jalen. It goes without saying, but this is a player that it's unsure what he becomes as a focal point. Is he as good as a third option on a good team? Is he just a rotation player? Is he better than that? Is he worse than that? He's one where at Summer League, like, you're looking for high indicators. So does he look amazing or does he look terrible? And the in-between stuff, it wouldn't be as much of interesting information. Now, I think he's going to have some interesting moments on offense, and then defensively, it'll be dependent on the matchups and who is he with on the court. But let's keep track of him. He's an interesting one.
Yeah. 11th pick, Chicago Bulls, Matas Buzelis, hometown kid, played for G League Ignite. Pretty cool moment for him to get drafted to the city he grew up in.
Yeah, for sure. It goes without saying, not everybody has that opportunity. That means he's gonna have a comfort standpoint. Get a pregame meal from mama and be able to, drive to the rink, and on the road he's been doing all his life. Going to Bulls games, I'm sure. What's interesting in the Bulls situation is that this is another roster that's in flux. They just resigned Patrick Williams, who you would think plays at the very least the same role. And maybe he doesn't necessarily have the same build, where Matas is a little slender, but Patrick is a little thicker. But they're both 3-4s that you think might be more 4s than 3s. So then, can they play together? Is there one that you're prioritizing? Is the re-signing of Williams simply a value play or an asset play? There are questions that at play here. But at the same time, the fact that I think for him specifically, the fact that he's not like a number 1, number 2, number 3 pick is going to give him a lot of room to breathe. There's a lot of stuff going on over in his life over the last 2 years, just from a basketball situation standpoint, whether it was at '89 or high school. And now he gets to, I don't know about flying under the radar. He's the hometown kid in the Chicago Bulls. Like, there's going to be pressure, but he's going to have the opportunity to at least like breathe, I would think. And I think it's going to help him as he gets his career going underway.
Oklahoma City with their 12th pick, with one of their 92,000 first round lottery pick, they select Nikola Topic from Serbia. A guard with a lot of potential, but again, coming back from injury, he goes into a situation, Jose, where he doesn't necessarily have to produce right away. You're looking at a team that has championship aspirations next year, right? So that's a very interesting situation.
He's going to be out for most likely the entirety of the campaign with meniscus injury he suffered, I believe it was in March or April. So, like you said, the Thunder, thank you, Paul George trade, multiple draft picks. So if you looked at the playoff run that they had, one of the things that I identified, and I'm sure they did, and clearly by the evidence of the pick, was the need for an additional ball handler beyond Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams, somebody that could create something off the dribble. They believe Nikola Topic can be that guy. The fact that he's going to be injured all year gives him a whole year of runway. They just went through it with Chet Holmgren. That was in basically the exact same situation. So they have experience from how do we build a program for a guy that isn't on our roster so that he can come in the next year and contribute. So that part makes sense. The question will be, just in a team so talented with clear aspirations to win right away, what does the role look like next year, and where does he fit in the hierarchy? The good news is he's going to have the ability to build chemistry with all the guys throughout the year, spending time with them. In a year, what does that look like?
13th pick, Sacramento. Kings fan probably mad that Sacramento picked yet again another guard. But you get Devin Carter, who is somebody that is known throughout who is known to be like just a winner. Somebody has energy. Look for him to potentially have Davion Mitchell's role. I think there's kind of like a skeleton for what he can be with the Sacramento Kings.
I think the fact they traded Davion Mitchell right after they got him, I think that tells you what you need to know. They're talking to you without talking to you, telling you that we believe Devin can do the stuff that Davion can do at a better level. I really like this prospect. I think his two-way ability is awesome. I think the fact that he can play off the ball so comfortably is really going to serve him in a system where obviously the dribble handoff around Domantas Sabonis is everything to that Kings offense. The question is going to be the jump shot, and the jump shot from a sense of how much gravity do you have? Some guys are much more comfortable off the dribble than they are, just spotting up. Some guys are comfortable on the move. Some guys are more comfortable in handoff situation versus, okay, just, driving kick. And then let me do what I'm comfortable doing, whether it's putting the ball in for one dribble or not. I think if he looks at Malik Monk and says, okay, I can become that, but my defense is better than his, I think you have a really good archetype for a successful player and a successful NBA career for a very long time.
Rounding up our lottery, we have Bob Carrington, who I'm very intrigued with. Portland Trailblazers selected him, but he got traded. That pick got traded to the Washington Wizards. Bob Carrington, 6'4", freshman, right? Still very young. When you look at his clip, you look at his draft prospect tape, he doesn't seem to care whether his shots are being contested or not. Like, he's just like, yo, let's get to it. You know what time it is. Very interesting because of the potential of that, and obviously Washington looking to go into a new direction. So what do we think about Bob Carrington?
To me, that seemed again like a value play, following your board and picking the best player available. It seems like his skill set's a little more redundant with what Jordan Poole is. But at the same time, if you're in Washington in a situation where we're clearly rebuilding, you're trying to find, diamonds in the rough in the developmental draft, even more so. So there's going to be an opportunity at some point in the system for this player to play. I don't know how much of an impact you're going to have with the team that they're building. Is going to be difficult, but I don't think confidence is going to be lacking. Whether he's getting 2 minutes a game or 30 minutes a game, I don't think it's going to be an issue with this young man. And then the other part is going to be, okay, well, if he's off the ball, can he find a way to be efficient and impactful, and can he draw sufficient gravity and be comfortable? Some guys, like I just mentioned, in Devin Carter's case, if they don't feel the ball, they're simply not as comfortable, even if they're 40-point 3-point shooters. So his fit, his growth is going to be interesting. He's the type of, there's a lot of guys in this situation, you get basically 18 months to make a statement of some kind of being like, okay, not only am I a player, I'm somebody that you need to account for when you're building out the long-term future of our team and our franchise. Let's see what comes of our friend Bob Carrington.
So, like, we're going into Summer League. Summer League just started. I want to ask you, what's your player to look out for that you'll be very interested in looking at?
I mean, I mentioned it earlier. For me, it's Stephon Castle, but that's more of my pick. I think, we didn't get into all the guys beyond the lottery, but if we're focusing on the lottery out of all these guys, he's the one I'm most interested to see how he looks, especially if he wants to take the reins of being a point guard and the lead ball handler for that team next year. And then the second would be Devin Carter, simply because I think the Kings, well, let's see if this DeMar DeRozan noise is real or not. But if it is, how he fits beside of DeMar DeRozan, if DeMar isn't on the roster, if he can step in and play with a Malik Monk, beside multiple guards, and have an impact defensively for a Kings team that is absolutely dead set on winning a playoff round without question. Let's see what that looks like. And I think it's going to start in Summer League for him.
For me, it'll probably be the two Kentucky guards. I'm very interested because, again, two very different players, but you're looking at Reed Shepherd. I want to see how confident he is, like just taking those shots, making decisions and that kind of stuff. And Rob Dillingham, obviously, like we know how confident he is offensively, is definitely somebody to look out for, especially in Summer League, in the first game, hoping he comes out on fire. Josué, I appreciate you, man. We got a chance to go over all of the lottery. We'll probably have to lock in and do a little bit of free agency soon.
Likewise, absolutely. Let's do it.